Hello. I have a giant witch hat on my head. I'm sorry. Also, this isn't a real mole. This is the most I could do for today. Also, I'm probably going to take this hat off soon because it's hot and Pippin is scared of it. Sorry about the air conditioner. I'm going to sit back though so you can see my head. What we've got here is week 4 check-in of my 31 books in 31 days. I am once again finished filming this at night after the light has gone. Now, granted, when I get home nowadays, it's way too late. The light's already gone. I could have filmed it earlier, but I didn't, and that's because I found a new show on YouTube, and I watched like 10 episodes. If you want something addictive to watch, it's called Try Not to Eat, and it's on the channel People versus Food, and they're presented with beautifully cooked dishes that they have to try to not eat, and there's prizes and there's punishments. The panelists are really entertaining. Also, I'm gonna wipe off this mole because it's ugly. Let's talk about books. Firstly, still reading all of the books I was reading last week: Battle Royale, American Elsewhere, Rouge, and Interview with the Vampire. I will try to be finishing Interview with the Vampire and Rouge this weekend. I'm particularly mad about Rouge. Funny story. So remember how last week I said that I was going to be filming a fun video if it didn't rain? Well, it didn't rain, and I was literally getting ready to go film when I got a notification on my phone saying, book club in 30 minutes for Rouge. And I texted my friend Miriam and I was like, is book club today? I haven't finished the book. And she was like, too bad, you're coming. I had been planning to finish this by the 29th, which is when I thought book club was, which was this weekend. Oh well. Anyway, it was fun. But I'm still reading that, and then I'm also still reading The Death Oops! I should just take this hat off. I'm also still reading The Death I Gave Him. These 4. Still reading. Very disheartening. Okay, I have to take this hat off now. Now I'm gonna wipe it off. Okay, now I'm just normal me again. I have these ribbons in my hair, also driving Pippin nuts, but in a Hunter kind of way, not a what's happening to my mom's head kind of way. So I do have some sad news to report. I not only had, sorry about got double light sources reflecting in the glasses, and I can't see shit without them. So we're just gonna deal with this, and the light is just whatever, you don't care. Pippin's under the hat. He's cool with it now that it's off my head. I wish I could take my phone that this is filming on. And so sad to report, I did have 2 DNFs. I hadn't DNF'd anything yet this spooky season, and now I have DNF'd 2 things, and both of them were surprising, one more than the other. So the first thing, I left my book in the other room. Oh well, it's fine. The first thing I DNF'd is just a DNF for now. It's a soft DNF. Is Never Whistle at Night. Now I think I might have just short storied myself out. I think I can't do more than 1 short story collection in a month. I think that's the problem. I was just like, I can't do it. I'm not in the mood anymore. I'm done. And I don't want to not enjoy that book. I want to give it its fair shot. Ring light is so bright. Hold on. That's a little better. Not enough light, but it's fine. I was being blinded. So I DNF'd that for now. But the problem then is that I had to find a book to replace it. And for those of you who've been around this channel a long time, I mean like long time, like original viewers, which is my friends. I once did a video showing how I make my TBRs. If you're interested in that, I could film another video. It's even more elaborate now than it was then. Anyway, it involves color, okay? I color code my TBRs. The Never Whistle at Night cover is very elaborate and it has a lot of color, and I thought Pippin was tugging on my ribbons again. It was just me. So I had to find a book that had a similar color scheme to be able to fit in with my TBR. It took me a couple of hours, honestly, because not only did I have to first identify some key target books, but then I had to find one that I either owned or I had easy access to an audiobook, because I knew I couldn't fit another physical book, because I've already got 5 outstanding that I somehow have to finish by Thursday of next week. It's probably not gonna happen, but we're gonna do our best. Long story short, what I finally ended up on, I ended up on We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, and I went to use my 1 credit that I had left from Libro, and can't use credits on We Sold Our Souls. So I was like, well, there's like a 6-week wait on the audio in the library. I don't want to pay a bunch of money to have it. Can't do that right now. So I was like, okay, well, we'll find another. And long story short, I ended up on Desperation. This is a Stephen King book. It came out in 1996. After some brief research, I realized that it is actually a mirror book to another book that was published on the same day under his pseudonym, which is Richard Bachman, and they have the same characters, just in a different situation. So now I have to read that too. That'll be next month or the month after. I have to read them close together though, so I don't forget about the characters. I'm about 45% of the way in. It's narrated by the author, which is interesting. He's not the best, but he's not bad. And I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. It's not my favorite Stephen King, but it's doing the trick. So, plus this cover is really cool. I'm talking about DNFs. I just got confused because then I started talking about the book that I started. So just pretend I didn't do that. The book that I DNF'd that surprised me was The Exorcist. I thought that I was gonna love the writing style because everybody loves it. It's a classic. It was like a mega bestseller. I've literally never seen somebody give a bad review of it. And so I went in like really confident that I was at least gonna like it, that the religious horror might make me uncomfortable because I was raised Catholic. But that was it. I made it about 10% in when I knew I was going to DNF the book because of the writing style. Not the story, although there were some story choices involved because of the style. But it was purely like this author and me and his idea of what good writing is not the same. I frankly am baffled by people not being annoyed by this writing style. So I don't understand if you like this book. I'm so happy for you, but the 19% of it that I did manage to read, I absolutely hated. If I would have kept going, it would have been a 1-star book. Like, I wish I could give it 0 stars. And I'm going to read you what I mean by this. So like, it was simultaneously overwritten. Like, I've never read so many run-on sentences in my life. A complicated sentence every now and then is good, guy, but then you got to mix it up. And then also the dialogue made me want to pull all of my hair out with my bare hands. Let's look at my bookmarks and let's read some samples because I read it on my Kindle. We're going to read you some examples of what I hated. Okay, so the first one comes from, I think it's page 1. I don't know what page it is. Okay, it says it's location 863. Okay, look, I don't know. It's in chapter 1. Okay, location 201 in my Kindle. The prose that I highlighted says, that terrible clarity, period. Gleam of the skull, period. Non-being, period. Irreversible, period. And that was my first clue. And then I wrote, he's writing like a 2010s YA dystopian author. That's not a compliment. Oh no. And then like he just over describes everything. Like he never met an object that he couldn't describe with unnecessarily flowery language. For example, somebody's just out walking on the street and they leave their house and he literally says, they walked out to the piquant, P-I-Q-U-A-N-T, comma, tree-lined street. Couldn't just say tree-lined street, you know? Later, he's talking about a river. And then I wrote, this is so overwritten to that previous one. Third highlight, the melancholy resonance shivered on the surface of the mud-brown river and seeped into the actress's tired heart. And then I wrote, why? Like, what the f***? Now, if it was just doing that, I think I would have been all right. But, I mean, I wouldn't have given it a good rating. It would have gotten like a 3 or maybe even a 2, but I would have probably finished it. But then the dialogue came in, and that's when I lost it. Hold on, I gotta go to this one, because my note says, what the fuck? But I don't remember the context. Oh, so the main character of The Exorcist is an actress. She's a famous actress, I think, and she's currently filming something in Washington, D.C., I think. Is that where it is? It doesn't matter. Her director is the worst character in the book, but he's written like you're supposed to find him charming, but he's just a weird and he has this tick that William Peter Blatty gives him where he literally takes pieces of his actors' scripts and eats them. I didn't highlight all of this, just the last sentence, and I'll talk about that in a second, but this is what's leading up to it. He's talking to her. Oh, you do have a script. I see. How nice. Director Burke Dennings, taut and elfin and with a twitching left eye that gleamed with mischief, surgically shaved a narrow strip from a page of her script with quivering fingers, cackling. This is the part I highlighted. I believe I'll have a bit of munch. What the f? And then he goes on to be an asshole, like I said, and she just lets him walk all over her, and it was so unpleasant to read about. Oh, I highlighted more about him. Chris smiled and shook her head as she remembered him destroying his studio suite of offices in a gin-soaked, mindless rage, and how later, when confronted by the studio's head of production with an itemized bill and Polaroid photos of the wreckage, he'd archly dismissed them as obvious fakes, since the damage was far, far worse than that. She's just sitting there like, oh, it's his thing. What a why? Like, and these are the people, and then the dialogue. Did I highlight any of the dialogue? I did, I think. Oh, here. I mean, I've read books that were set in the 70s. Okay, so that's not my problem. But this dialogue is inane. The actress has come home, and her daughter Reagan is the one that is possessed by the demon. I didn't even get to her being possessed by the demon. The demon is there, like, just playing tricks on her and, like, hiding in her toys and talking to her. And that's as far as I got. This is a story about obsession, by the way, if you didn't know that, because it's called The Exorcist. I didn't even get to meet the priests yet. Well, except for in the prologue. So she's asking where Rags is. That's her daughter. She calls her daughter Rags. Where's Rags? Downstairs in the playroom. What doing? Sculpting? She's making a bird, I think. It's for you. Yeah, I need one, Chris murmured. She moved to the stove and poured a cup of hot coffee. Were you kidding me about that dinner? No, of course not, answered Sharon. It's Thursday. Big dinner party? No, I gather it's just 5 or 6 people. Hey, neato. And then I wrote, this writing is horrifying. That's just like that's how people talk in this book. Like, it's just so mind-numbing and annoying. Oh, this is just completely overwritten. And this is when I decided I was going to DNF and I stopped taking notes. And then I tried to get as far as I could and I only made it 9% more. So this is from chapter 2, location 830. He stood at the edge of the lonely subway platform, listening for the rumble of a train that would still the ache that was always with him, like his pulse. That's a full sentence, by the way, like his pulse. This guy's never met a phrase he couldn't turn into a sentence fragment. Heard only in silence. Also a full sentence in the book. He shifted his bag to the other hand and stared down the tunnel. Points of light. Also a full sentence. Points of light. They stretched into dark like guides to hopelessness. What the fuck? I just wrote, I can't. I give up. Oh, and before that, this line might have been okay if the rest of it wasn't so bad, but this ended a chapter with the first hint of Reagan being a demon targeting her or whatever. Just the last line of the chapter is, what looked like morning was the beginning of endless night. And just that combined with the rest of the overwrittenness, like, it just set me off. Anyway, yeah, I DNF'd The Exorcist. I will not be reading it. I will not be reading any more books from this author, but I do want to watch the movie. That's where we're at. Yeah, those are my 2 DNFs. Now, while we're at it, because I already started talking about the books that I started, I'm not going to talk too much about them. Desperation by Stephen King. Started that. We'll give my full review in the last video of the month, which I will film on Halloween, but I won't be able to get it up until Friday morning, the 1st of November, just so you know. So you're not getting it on Halloween. You're going to get it the day after. Yeah? Uh-huh. And then today, I am not very far at all. I'm just picking this one because I've got a hard copy. And I'm giving Editing Ashley a break from having to find a picture and put it right here. And that is The Impusium by Olga Tokarczuk. This is subtitled A Health Resort Horror Story. This is by the same author who wrote Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, and she won the Nobel Prize for Literature. See? Right there. This just sounded really cool. It's a horror story set in Poland in this mountain retreat in the early 1900s, like just before World War I, where people with tuberculosis went to get cured or to seek relief. What I gather also, you can probably read this on its own, But I did do some research before I started it today into The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. He was a German author, and he wrote contemporaneously about the same period about a man who goes to a health resort for people with tuberculosis, is diagnosed with tuberculosis, and then his life changes. World War I starts, but I gather that this is a feminist take on that same sort of story, so we'll see how it goes. I'm really not very far at all, so I can't say much. I'm on page 10. I just love this cover. I had to give it a shot, and I was able to get a new copy of it from the library in time. So I'm very pleased I didn't have to buy it. I'm really trying to be better about librarying things before I buy them, if I don't know if I'm going to like them for sure. And then the other two books I started are Lay Them to Rest by Laura Norton, which is a true crime / science book about forensic anthropologists and how they help identify specifically Jane and John Does and put them to rest. That is really good, but I'm having to listen to it pretty slowly because of the subject matter, but also because it is not a trashy true crime book. It's very thoughtful and compassionate, so it takes a lot more out of you and isn't immediately as addicting, but I'm really enjoying it. And then the last book that I started but haven't finished yet is, I started this one today also on audio, and I'm like 20% in right now, and that's Frankenstein. I have read this book twice before. I read it once for my master's exams and then once in high school, I think. I think it's one of those books that is different every time you read it because of where you're at in your life. It's, so far, my main takeaway is that it's super gay and I don't like Victor at all, Frankenstein the doctor. Now let's talk about the books I finished. Okay, so I finished 5. I finished 5 books. Oh, I forgot I was gonna have to keep track. So we left off at 14. We left off at 14 books last time. The 15th book I finished is A is for Alibi by Sue Grafton. I'd never read Sue Grafton before. This is my first time reading her infamous Kinsey Millhone Alphabet Murders series. Every book goes in alphabetical order. She never got to finish it though, so it's gonna end at Y because she passed away from cancer before she could start Z. So I knew that going in. But so far this was just a fun time. It aged way better than I thought that it would in terms of the writing style and the feel of it. It's almost noir, if like noir was led by a female. Usually like detective novels that are noir are led by men. It's also very 80s. Apparently this series takes place entirely in the 80s. She never lets Kinsey leave the 80s. It stretched all the way to the 2000s, late 2000s, 2010s, I think. Anyway, I'm saying nothing. Kinsey Millhone is an ex-cop. She's a private detective. She's kind of hard-boiled. She's twice divorced. She has no kids. She doesn't want kids. And she has terrible taste in men. She doesn't think that, but I do. And she gets hired by this woman who just got out of prison for killing her husband to prove she did not actually kill that husband. It goes from there. I mean, it's just this standard mystery. Nothing about this plot really stood out, but for some reason, I'm compelled to keep going. The idea of a long-running series like this, I want to see where it goes. I want to at least make it to C. The second book, which I have out from the library right now, is called B for Burglar, and then the third one is called C for Corpse. Some book I was reading, I can't remember what it was. It was a book about books. It must have been, because the person was talking about mystery novels and how there was this really cool twist or this cool literary device used in C is for Corpse. Obviously, I don't remember even the book that it was in, so I can't tell you what the device was, but I'm curious, so I want to at least get to that one. But anyway, I gave this 4 stars. In hindsight, it probably doesn't deserve 4 stars. It's probably more like a 3.5 star book, but Cop said 4 and my heart said 4 when I finished it, even though it's kind of fallen out of my head since then. Good time. Book 15 is for Alibi. Second book I finished is another mystery. I really went mystery heavy this week, actually the last 2 weeks, and that is Why Didn't They Ask Evans by Agatha Christie. I was so surprised by how much I liked this book. I think this is in my top 5 Agatha Christie books. It was just so much fun. This is not, it's standalone. It's not connected to any of her ongoing series, either Poirot or Marple or any of the other smaller ones. It's totally a standalone, and it follows these 2 people whose names I cannot remember right now. Well, I remember her name. Her name is Frankie. She's the daughter of an earl, And she and the main character, the other main character, whose name I cannot remember at this particular moment, grew up together as children. But there's obviously a huge class difference because he's the son of the vicar and she is the daughter of an earl. Anyway, they were just sort of friendly towards each other, and they happened to run into each other at the exact right time, because the book opens with the main character. I gotta look up his name. Is it Bobby? I think it's Bobby. Yeah, Bobby Jones. So he's playing golf with his father. His father's a bit of a, he's just on him all the time about being lazy and your generation doesn't do anything and like all that kind of stuff. And they happen upon a man who has just fallen off of a cliff and is clearly dying. They think that he's dead when they first find him, but he does eventually become conscious. He revives and he says the title of the book. His last words are, "Why didn't they ask Evans?" And then he dies, or at least he passes out and he doesn't say another word. And then Bobby has to leave. He finds a picture in the guy's pocket of a beautiful woman with him in it as well. And then some guy comes along and Bobby's like, "I have to go." I don't remember. I think he had somewhere to be. I can't remember where. And he takes over watching the body, and that's that. But Bobby and his friend Frankie happen to become extra interested in the case because they both attend the inquest and he testifies. They end up thinking that something is weird. They just think that something is going on. They have I don't want to say too much about it, but it's basically like the people who claim he is who identified his body and claimed it don't seem to be who they say they are. And at first, just for shits and giggles, Frankie pushes him into investigating and to try to figure out who this guy really was and why he was there, because it really seems like he was pushed off the cliff and it was murder. All this to say is that these are two non-detectives. They're smart, but they're also like really young and they have no idea what they're doing. So they just sort of bumble nerdily and joyfully through this investigation until things become a little bit serious. Anyway, it was just really fun. Frankie especially was really fun. And I had a really good time with it. And apparently there was a really recent adaptation on the BBC. And I think I'm going to check it out. It's on BritBox. I can get like a free trial or something because I would like to see this on screen. Anyway, it was really fun. I gave it 4.5 stars. I listened one morning. It took me 2 hours. It's only a 2-hour audiobook, so it probably actually took me less than 2 hours because I was listening to it on like 1.35 speed or something. And I listened to The Night Guest by Hildur Knutsdottir. I think that's how you say it. And this one really surprised me, not least because the story was really good. It's about a woman who goes to the doctor because she is constantly exhausted when she wakes up. She's in pain. She has bruises. Sometimes she's bloody and she has no idea what's going on. And at first she thinks she's sleepwalking and then it goes from there. But this was translated from Icelandic by Mary Robinette Kowal, who is an author that I have not had good luck with in the past. I've given some of her books like 3 and 4 star ratings, but it's always because of the story and the ideas and not her writing specifically. And the books I've read of hers that don't have an idea that pushes me through, I've really not liked very much. I have also listened to audiobooks narrated by her previously and really disliked them. Like she got poet voicey, you know what I mean? Like overly dramatic. So I was like really upset when I realized I had to read this book by audio because I'm not paying $12 for a novella on ebook. And my library only had the audiobook, but I didn't even end up listening to it from my library. I listened to it on Everand because there was too much of a wait on my Libby. Whatever, you don't care. Point is, this was really good. It was really creepy. It was a compelling listen. I like had to keep going and find out. It was a little bit ambiguous. Like you don't get hard and fast answers. You sort of have to put it together for yourself, and you could make an argument for a lot of different interpretations. I think there is one pretty clear interpretation for what was going on, and I'm pretty sure I got it right, but I can see how other people would have different interpretations. But it does have a bit of an ambiguous ending. With that in mind, it was really creepy. It was a really short listen and I had a good time, and I liked Mary Robinette Kowal. So maybe she's just a really good translator. And she was fine in the audiobook, so I even liked her. People can change their mind. Anyway, I'm glad I listened to it. So that was 4 stars. Okay, so book 18 is a little novella called Rest Stop by Nat Cassidy. I mentioned I would be reading this last time, and now it is official. I have given every single thing I've read from Nat Cassidy 5 stars. This is a 5-star book. This isn't going to be for everyone though. So just don't think that I'm recommending this wholeheartedly, because I'm not. There are people who will hate it. There are people who will be disgusted by it. There will be people who will become like existentially and religiously upset by it. Okay, I'm going to talk about the thing, and then I'm going to talk about the under thing. That's just what I call it, okay? So the basic plot of this book is a 160-page novella. I think it's shorter on Kindle and then the paperback, and I had the Kindle. I think it's like 128 pages on Kindle. I don't know why it's longer on paperback. Maybe they just made the font really big. I don't know. I want the paperback, but I don't have it. I just have the Kindle version right now. Doesn't matter. So this is about a guy named Abe who is from Tucson. I mean, the author went to school here. We know this because they mention playing a gig at Club Congress, which is downtown. It's like 25 minutes away from me, and it's where they caught John Dillinger. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. So the main character is this guy named Abe, and he is on his way to, he's driving on a road trip because his grandmother has just had a stroke. I think a stroke, maybe it was a heart attack. Anyway, she's really sick, and his family wants him to come and say goodbye to her. He is dreading it because he's always had a really strained and tough relationship with his grandmother, who was a refugee from the Holocaust and World War II from Germany. She's a bit of a pill and is always on him about things, and he just doesn't like her very much. So he's on his way to her deathbed when he stops at a rest stop to get some snacks, to take a pee, you know, as you do. And he goes to the bathroom, but when he tries to go out, the door is locked. And then the book goes from there. Now, this sounds like a setup of someone who is being like physically and emotionally tortured, which he is. And it's just an excuse for gore. But that's really not what's going on here. Like, there's some gross stuff, there's some scary stuff, there's stuff with bugs, there's stuff with blood, there's stuff with snakes. But it's not about that. It's very introspective. He doesn't, when he's not fighting, you know, to stay alive or whatever, he is thinking about his place in life and his relationship with his grandmother, and his, like, it's very existential and very spiritual. I gotta take these ribbons off, they're falling off. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it completely, but it's much deeper than just a guy fighting to survive in a rest stop. And that's why I love Nat Cassidy. But absolutely look up the content warnings, because you will not be okay if you're not okay with some stuff. If that's all I have to say. It's not extreme horror. I don't like extreme horror. I don't think there's a point to it. There's like, it's just to freak you out and make you disgusted, and this was not doing that. 5 stars. Can't wait to see what this guy does next. I love his brain. I'm a fan. He's one of my favorite authors now. I just read Nestlings late September, and now it is mid to late October, and he's already a favorite author. So Nat Cassidy. And then book 18. God, we're only on book 18 and it's the 25th. But I'm in the middle of like so many things. I'm gonna do it. It's fine. I'm gonna do it. And that would be How to Help a Hungry Werewolf by Charlotte Stein. So this is an author. She was an indie author, I believe. She wrote mostly erotica romances, like heavy on the smut. And then she stopped writing for a while. And then she came out with a rom-com, which was partly inspired by Ted Lasso. And it was called When Grumpy Met Sunshine. And I had a really good time with it, except for one thing, which I'll talk about in a second. But I was able to forgive that because that book was so funny and charming. But she did it again in this book. And so now I'm like less willing to forgive her for it. So what this book is about, it's a paranormal romance / cozy fantasy about Cassie and Seth. And Cassie has just learned that she's a witch, and Seth is a werewolf. Neither of them were witches or werewolves when they knew each other. They were best friends when they were children, all the way up through like midway through high school, when Seth like suddenly became handsome and like blossomed into, you know, a person who could pass for cool, because they were both bullied by this group of jerks when they were children. And then he sort of did the ultimate betrayal of her and joined the bullies. Like, he became cool. I didn't think that was explored well enough, first of all. Like, he did something that was really terrible to her that traumatized her and made them stop being friends. And she didn't think she could ever forgive him or even want to see him again. There is a sort of an explanation for that part of it. The book opens with that. But even without that one incident, like, he would not really talk to her anymore. They stopped being best friends. He like wanted to be a cool kid. And that's a betrayal on its own. Fast forward 10 years and Cassie is back in town because her grandmother, who was the only person who was really accepting of her in this town when she was growing up, her parents were kind of like, they weren't like abusive or anything, but they were emotionally negligent, and she's fat, and that's a part of the plot. But Seth shows up at the door because I guess he and the grandmother were friends, and this makes Cassie very confused. Turns out Cassie's grandmother was a bit of a part-time witch. She wasn't a full witch, they call her Cobble, but she helped Seth with his werewolf symptoms. The werewolves in this world are really fucked up. So this is billed as What We Do in the Shadows meets Gilmore Girls. I don't really think either of those things are true, but the part that is where What We Do in the Shadows, they actually call it out in the book, is that the mythical creatures are like grungy. They're not romantic. It's like the fairies are jerks. They're horny. They play nasty tricks on you. They steal things. They would kill you if they could. The vampires are dirtbags who live in like apartments and can't feed themselves. The werewolves, when they shift, it's very painful and they can't control it. And it means certain things, like depending on what triggers their shift, they can't do that thing. And that affects the main character. And anyway, the magic system was weird. It wasn't fully developed, which honestly, that was fine. It was like my least of my three main complaints that I have, but it was a little bit undefined. But that's the What We Do in the Shadows aspect. And then the Gilmore Girls aspect is the small town. We didn't get much of that in this. This is mostly just Seth and Cassie being together at her grandmother's house. But I presume in future books, we're going to get more of the town. That said, even before the thing that I'm going to talk about, my biggest complaint about the book, I was off and on with this in terms of liking it and loving it, because it just felt a little bit off. Like, the pacing and the rhythm of the story was just a little bit off. Like, I could never fully sink into it. I could never just be in the story because it was just off. I don't know how else to explain it. I think part of it might be that this author is British, but she's trying to write American characters, and maybe her natural rhythm of storytelling, which I thought was really good in When Grumpy Met Sunshine, which I have up there. I don't know why I'm pointing. You can't see it. But it just didn't work as well here. Like, there were moments that really clicked, and then like 2 paragraphs later, something would take me out again. I also think the editor didn't edit this enough. I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary words, repeated words, that phrases or jokes went on too long. I just feel like it needed to be cut down a little bit. And less is more kind of a thing. But honestly, all of that would have made it a 3.5, 4-star book. However, the thing that happens between them at the beginning of the book involves her being bullied for being fat. And it's like the ultimate betrayal coming from her former best friend. So her fatness and that incident of her being friendless and having the person she loved most in the world betray her like that really affected her emotionally. But the tonal mismatch of the funny, goofy, bantery dialogue with that trauma never quite mixed perfectly for me. Even that wasn't as big of a problem as the fact that the main conflict here is that Cassie truly deep down can't even fathom that he would be attracted to her. But this is also while during the plot going on, he's getting erections around her. He's dirty talking to her. He's telling her she has beautiful breasts. I mean, all of this is it makes sense in the context of the story. He's constantly complimenting her. He's constantly showing clear affection for her and hinting that he has deeper feelings. And spoilers, the real kicker, because this is very smutty at the end. About 70% of the way through, it gets really smutty. I'll just say it. So he can't have sex or masturbate because he's a werewolf, because what sets him off is being horny. So this should say not hungry, it should say horny. But he hasn't had sex, he's a virgin. and he can't really masturbate to alleviate symptoms because every time he gets those feelings, he starts turning into a werewolf and he's got claws and it's just the whole thing. So he just doesn't do it. And she makes him this magic potion that helps him with these symptoms and he's able to relieve some pressure. And he's like so ready to do that. He just goes into her bathroom and finishes. And she hears him say her fucking name. And somehow she's still like, oh, it's just because he's horny. Any person would do. Blah, blah, blah. He's not attracted to me. He would never be attracted to me. And I'm like, I get that you have really low self-esteem. I get that you're traumatized. But the flirty banter, like she's aggressively sexual with him. She's drawn to him. He's clearly drawn to her. All the evidence in front of our eyes and the way they talk to each other is that they are both ridiculously horny for each other specifically. And yet all we get in her point of view is he could never. He's not attracted to me. It's da. And it's just, it makes her seem stupid. And she's not stupid. And this exact same conflict was in When Grumpy Met Sunshine. That's just not how people think, okay? I mean, maybe the author thinks that way, I don't know. But in my experience, those kind of emotions are much more complicated than just, oh, he'll never like me. Like, to me, a more realistic scenario would be she's a smart girl. She sees all the signs. She knows rationally in her head that he is attracted to her, but she's pushing him away because of fear of intimacy or a fear of being betrayed again, or, you know, she's purposely blocking that out. And that's not what's happening in the book. Or if it is, and the author's doing a bad job of portraying that. I don't know. There's just no nuance to it. So it makes the character come off like she's stupid. She's the same person who is like saying that she enjoys her curves and purposefully wears tight clothes to show those curves off. And then she turns right around the next second and is basically like, he'll never like me because I'm fat. And I'm like, what? I don't know, man. It just didn't work. I gave this 3 stars. I really need this author to not make this a conflict in any of her books again, because she has a delightful brain when she turns that part of it off. Like, some of this is so funny. I was laughing. I was giggling. The 2 things that were my favorite that made me laugh the hardest is that when she's learning to do her witch thing, she goes a little bit overboard and like makes every single potion she could think of and ruins the kitchen. But she actually accidentally turns the microwave into a sentient being, and there's no more numbers or time or anything on the clock, but instead messages from the microwave, like it's talking to them. Let me read it to you. Actually, I gotta find it. I can't find it. I should have marked it. Basically, the microwave just says really funny things, and it's like, who am I? What am I? And then later they try to clean it, and like, I don't know. I can't explain it. It's a sentient microwave. And then the second thing that really made me laugh was when he's first explaining the supernatural world to her, because he's been in it for 10 years and she's a complete newbie to it. They have these like outdoor little sessions where he sits far away in a lawn chair and she's on her porch, and she's asking him about being a werewolf and like trying to figure out, you know, what it's like. And she's like fucking with him, and she goes, if I throw this stick right now, would you chase it? And he goes, no. And then she throws it. And he has to literally clench his butt cheeks together to stop from chasing the stick. And it was so fucking funny. Anyway, like, stuff like that makes me want to keep trying this author's books, but I really need her to think more cohesively and just stop with the low self-esteem bullshit. This didn't need that. Anyway, I have so many conflicting thoughts and feelings. This isn't like a meh 3-star rating. This is a I'm so frustrated, this could have been so much better rating. Anyway. That's my last book. I think I talked about everything. Yeah, I talked about everything. I did. Okay. I don't know what time it is. What time is it? Oh, it's my bedtime. I have to go to bed. But, yeah. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. Please don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe if you want to. And also down in my doobly-doo below, I mentioned last time I have actually signed up for Buy Me a Coffee page. So if you want to support me more directly, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you for those of you who you know, bought me coffees after the last video. I really appreciate it. If you, please feel free to tell me about any of these books. If you have controversial opinions about any of them, or you want to come at my controversial opinions, feel free. But if you don't have anything to say about any of the books, please leave me a devil emoji for The Exorcist. And I will see you in the next video, which will probably be, depending on how I'm feeling tomorrow, there might be another video, but probably not, let's be honest. Oh, hi, baby. Say hi to everyone. Say hi. Next Friday, you should have a video from me with a final wrap up, and you see if I will actually make it to 31 books. And that's it. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Okay, love you, bye.